following announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, this is usually the hardest part of a bad season. Nearing the very end, especially when the end is imminent for your head coach. This is sort of when the frustration and the vitriol turns into empathy. It's so bad, right? Which is part of the reason why I haven't engaged in any of the Ronald Rivera press conferences, because it's painful to watch. When you know it's over for a coach and you see them stuttering and stammering through press conferences, searching for the right words that don't exist, and just looking defeated. And I'm pretty sure that's what these look like at this point. I've seen it enough times. I've been a fan long enough. I know what it looks like. You know when it's dead coach walking, and it's not fun to watch. And I have no ill will towards Ronald Rivera, but I also don't have any empathy for him either, because I'm ready to move on. And at this point, nothing he says holds any, value or merit. It's kind of how the players probably feel at this point. Is nothing that he says now kind of holds any weight with them. They're ready for change. As a fan base, we're ready for change. And so it's a tough position to be in, because we still got a month of football left. And we know there's nothing really to be gained from these final 4 games other than assessing the quarterback. But then can you fairly assess the quarterback in the environment that's been created? Because the players have clearly quit. Now, maybe they come back post-bye, refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready for this stretch run. The likelihood is they'll come back refreshed, get through the full week, feeling good, going into the game, get their brains bashed in by the Rams, and then they go right back to where they were pre-bye, which is we suck and we're ready for the season to be over. So at this point, it's hard to assess Sam, because there's a lot of factors. The players aren't mentally locked in like they were earlier in the season. The offensive line isn't great. The play calling is, to me, getting worse as the weeks progress. The execution is lacking. The game plans have been horrific, etc., etc., etc. And so it's really not an advantageous position to be in. And generally, that's what happens when you're a young quarterback playing on a team that is going through a lost season. And that's tough, right? Especially when it's a lot tougher. It becomes even harder when the guy that is going to be in charge isn't actually there right now. There isn't a single person in the building right now that's probably going to be here next year from a personnel standpoint. And that goes all the way to the top, and when we're talking GM, all the way down to, your quality control assistants. You know what I'm saying? Like, all of that is going to change next year, and the players know it. And it's hard for players to buy in when they know that this isn't how it's going to be next year. And then to that point, a guy like Sam, you look for development, you look for growth, but everything's going to change with him next year. There's going to be a new offensive coordinator. You're not building off of what you did this year, because it's going to start anew next season, right? So the only thing that is really helping Sam at this point is just experience, just playing, seeing things, experiencing things. You want those to be positive experiences, but in a lost season, they tend to be negative, right? And so there's this question, is Sam regressing? I don't know how to answer that, because yesterday was a bad game, but it was bad for everybody. I still haven't seen the game where I go, man, we would have won except Sam was trash. Because there were games last year where we would go, we would have won that game if Taylor Heineke didn't XYZ, if he didn't ... right? Or if he would have ... We saw that over his 2 years, essentially, as the starter, right? Where we felt like, hey, we played good enough defense and the offense around him looked good enough, and he just didn't make plays. He didn't make throws. You know, that Giants game last year, the first one, is a prime example. He didn't play well in that game, did Taylor Heinicke. He missed throws and opportunities that would have won us that game had he just played solid ball. There haven't been many of those this year, if any. Like, when Sam has struggled and played poorly, the whole team stunk it up. You know, I think maybe the first Giants game, but I mean, we were so ill prepared for that game. It's amazing that the score was what it was, and that speaks to the ineptitude of the Giants specifically. You know, really both Giants games do, because you turn it over 6 times and you don't give away. I mean, you don't get any in return. You're not supposed to lose a 12-point game or 13-point game or whatever it ended up being. 31-19, 31-18, whatever the score ended up being. That's not what the final score is supposed to be. You're supposed to get your brains bashed in when you turn it over 6 times. We turned it over 4 or 5 times against the Bills, and we got 1 back in return, and we lost that game 37-3. That's what it's supposed to look like when the turnover battle is that great of a discrepancy. But I said all of that to say this. This is like Christmas when I was like 8. Like, the peak of Christmas was from, like, for me, from like 7 years old to probably like 12. All right. And the worst part about Christmas was the waiting. Especially when you already knew. And if you got little kids, you might want to shun them away. I'll give you a second to cover their ears or send them in a different room. All right. But especially after you found out old Saint Nick was just a figment of everybody's imagination, and your parents were the ones supplying the gifts under the tree. At that point, now the gifts are there. You can see them. You come home from school, they're already under the tree. I don't know what your household was like growing up. I didn't know if your parents kept that charade on, or they didn't want you to see the gifts and try to start guessing and speculating. But my parents didn't give a shit. As they bought the things and they wrapped them, it went under the tree. And by the time you got to Christmas morning, all the presents were there. But most of the presents had been there for over a week or 2 already. And just seeing those presents there every day, and the anticipation and the building up to getting to the point where you can rip those gifts open and get to what's inside, was killing me. The suspense was killing me. That was always the worst part. And my parents were the worst, really my mom, because she would make us wake up, clean our rooms, brush our teeth, eat breakfast. All our friends are calling us, what'd you get for... We haven't even opened our gifts yet, bro. Mom's making us do all of this shit before we can get... It's 10:30 before we get to our gifts, which is crazy on Christmas morning, right? It's torture. That was always the worst part. So we got smart and we started sleeping all in one bed. So there was no 3 people having to clean separate rooms, make separate beds. No, we all slept in one bed in one room. And so we expedited the process. We learned how to manipulate the game, so to speak. But I said all of that to say that was the hardest part, was just the anticipation, the waiting. That's where we are now. We know what's coming. We know what's looming next year. Right? As the calendar turns from December to January and from 2023 to 2024, we know what's looming. Everybody does. It's only a matter of time. But it's getting to that point where there's finality and we can move forward and we can start the GM search and we can start the head coaching search and we can fill out the staff, and that coach can fill out his staff, and we can start to see this thing take shape. That's the part that's frustrating and hard, because from where we are now to that point, we're going to have to endure a lot of shit. And it's not going to be pretty. And days like yesterday, there's still 1 or 2 more of those potentially this season. This is a lost cause. And it's just tough to watch. And as those games start to stack up, those types of performances stack up, people become less and less sold on the players that are here, which to me isn't a really good representation of what these players are capable of, which is why I'm adamant that this roster isn't as bad as a lot of you are making it out to be. Like, you went into this season thinking, hey, if the ball bounces our way, if the defense doesn't have to be top 10 like it was last year, just needs to be, top 12 or 15, like middle of the pack, we should be fine because the offense is going to be exponentially better. These were things that you were saying to yourself. We said this is the best offense we've had since 2015 with Kirk and Deshaun and Pierre and Jordan Reed and Jamison Crowder and Chris Thompson. This is what we were uttering coming into the season. This is the best offense since ... Now all of a sudden, none of these guys can play. Everybody's trash. Trade everybody. We got to blow this thing up. Nobody here is worth keeping. And it's amazing how a lot of you have done a complete 180 on this roster when at the end of the day, we talked about this this is far from a great roster. But it's not the worst roster either. And you can win. Most importantly, and this is the thing that gets lost in all, you can win with this roster. How big? Probably not Super Bowl big. Not with the way this roster is constructed. This was before 4-9 and looking like one of the worst teams in football. I'm talking about before the season started when there was still hope. When you were thinking, man, this could be the year. Ronald, 4-year plan, here it is. Maybe year 4 is the year they finally do it. You weren't thinking that this was one of the worst rosters in football then. And not a lot has changed since early September, late August to now, other than the coaching staff, how things are being done, how they're executing, what they're being coached to do. A lot of the things defensively are the same. They've been the same, which is why I was always nervous about this defense. Way more nervous than a lot of you were. I didn't expect it to be this bad now. I never predicted that. But I did think that the defense was a liability. Because again, last year, we got by because of what other teams did, not because of what we did to other teams. And that's the difference. Good defense is good defense. You know it when you see it. We created that turnover, not the Colts just dropped the football on the ground, right? Like literally their quarterback fumbled without anybody touching him. Literally at the end of that ball game, their quarterback who made his first career start against us, who you thought you were going to dominate, throws a dime to Michael Pittman Jr. in stride, running through our secondary, and he drops the football. That's not because of what we did defensively. That's because of what they did. 4th and 2, the Packers go for it, and they've got a wide open receiver screaming down the field for a touchdown, and Aaron Rodgers decides to throw the underneath route, and Kendall Fuller breaks it up, and we get the football. That wasn't what we did. That was a poor miscommunication on part of Aaron Rodgers. They had drops in that game. We got off the field on 3rd down. Remember, the Packers did not convert a single 3rd down in that game last year against us defensively. And, we jumped to all of these stats. Oh, this is the first game of Aaron Rodgers' career where he didn't convert a 3rd down. This is the first game since 1992 the Packers haven't. And all this stuff, and you beating your chest, and I'm like, you watched this game? We weren't that good on 3rd down. The Packers were that bad on 3rd down. However, I couldn't have imagined that the defense would take this large of a step backwards. Wouldn't have imagined it. But I also thought this offense would be better. I thought it would be more consistent. That hasn't happened either. But I said all of that to say this, and then something I want to get to, and we'll move on. This roster isn't as bad as you think. I said it yesterday on the show. And a lot of people are going to disagree, and that's fine, But I've watched the NFL long enough to know. This is unlike any other sport. If the right GM is selected And then he has an excellent offseason in picking players, whether it be via free agency or the draft or both. And you add it to some of the players that are already here who do have talent. Contrary to popular belief amongst most of the fan base, there are players on this team and roster that actually play football at a very high level, high enough to be impact difference-making players. But when shit's going sideways and there's really no one there stopping it, this is your end result, right? But again, we have to wait. And that's the part. Hurry up and wait, as they like to say. We got a whole entire bye week to watch actual good football. And then we come back to watching our pathetic excuse of a franchise. And we got to do it 4 more times before we can even start to think about what the future holds for this organization. You saw the turnout. Like, they've got to stop promoting sellouts as if it's us, our fan base, actually showing up to sell out the stadium. They've got to stop doing it at this point. Like, that speaks to me of Snyder tone deaf type of promotion. Like, you got to understand what this is. We don't want to hear that shit right now. Like, how tone deaf can you be to be beating your chest and promoting the fact that there's another sellout, knowing you haven't had an actual home crowd sellout where your fans showed up since week 1 against Arizona? The Bills came in here and took over. The Bears fans were well represented on Monday Night Football. The Giants fans came in and took over. The Eagles fans came in and took over. And the Dolphins fans just came in and took over. You haven't had a real, true sellout, and for good reason. We've been awful at home. I would argue we've been the worst team at home this season. At least the Patriots just lost 6-0. Yeah, they didn't score, but they didn't give up 45 points either. They've gotten their ass whooped at home too, though. Like, the Giants, the Patriots, and the Commanders have to be the 3 worst home teams this season. Have to be. I guess the Cardinals might be in there, but I don't think they've taken some serious ass whoopings at home like we have. We've been taken to the curb, and we've been stomped out at home 4 or 5 times this season. Bills game, Bears game. The Giants felt like a curb stomping, even though it was a 2-score loss. Felt like we lost by 4 scores. And obviously the Dolphins game. We've been miserable at home. They got to stop doing that shit. That's so tone deaf. But it reeks of Snyder, honestly. That's some shit Snyder would do. Hey, look, we got sellout crowd. Bullshit. But anyway, I digress. Another hard part of a lost season where changes are imminent, and I'm talking sweeping changes are imminent, is there's a lot of frustration, right? And there's a lot of uncertainty. And I want to call this around my timeline. So let's go around my timeline, see what I saw that interests me, that I wanted to talk about real quick. And this will kind of serve as a in other news of sorts. So let's go around my timeline, shall we? So I want to start with the clips on the left, or these quotes on the left that are all in white, right? This is from Nikki Javala's Twitter. Shout out to Nikki Javala again. Her Twitter, where she got some quotes from Dolphins linebacker David Long. And this was a guy, if you guys remember, I was very high on, and I wanted us to sign in free agency. This guy is a dog. He would have been a huge upgrade at the linebacker position. He's playing great football for the Dolphins right now. And this is what he had to say about it. And I'm always curious, fascinated with what other people that play against us, whether it's a coach, a GM, players on the field, I'm always fascinated as to how they view us. I remember you remember me always bringing up in 2020 when we played the Steelers, Mike Tomlin said, all you got to do is on first and second down, cover, and then he gave out two numbers, and it was 24 and 17. And he said, when you get to third down, now you got to look for 41, 82, 17, and 24. That was his essentially breakdown of us in 2020. We were trash and we didn't have many options. And so it tells you how you're viewed around the league. I'm always curious as to what others are saying about us after they play us. So these are the quotes. I'll read them one at a time. And so we start with the first one. This is from David Long, Dolphins linebacker, who they signed in free agency this year, who's playing really well for them. Quote, all you really have to do to defend this team is just be disciplined. They kind of struggle with the routine parts. Don't we know it? When we watched them play, their best stuff was when Sam Howell was scrambling or they moved the pocket and just let him try to make plays. They're going to be rollouts and breaking the pocket. You got to plaster. But if you just stay on your man and find somebody when you don't have nobody, it's really easy to defeat stuff like that. Closed quote. So essentially he's saying, hey, they base offense, the shit they like to run is trash. It's easy to defend. It's predictable. You know where you got to be. And as long as you do what you're supposed to do, you play assignment football, they're going to F up. They're not going to run the right depth. They're not going to run with the right tempo. We've seen, how many times have we seen this year, two dudes in the same spot and we go, I know that's not how that's supposed to look. On 4th and 1 against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, on the one of the most critical downs of the game, we have our receiver in motion running into the running back before he can even get started towards the line of scrimmage, and it blows the entire play up. Like, that's the shit that we've been on this season. We're poorly coached. We don't execute. Our players aren't locked in. And so it makes it easy on the opposing team's defense to stop what it is we're doing. The only time that we're hard to stop, according to David Long, and we've seen that. If you've looked at the offense the last month of the season, the only time we have any success is when Sam goes off script. Now, what does that say? Could that say Sam's struggling with the offense? Could it say Sam's not seeing the field well? Does that say EB's offensive scheme is trash? Is it saying that EB's scheme is easy to stop? We're predictable? Is it a combination of all of those things? Is it a few of those things? I don't know. Guys aren't getting open. They're not running the open green grass. They're not creating separation when it's man-to-man coverage. There's so many different reasons as to why this offense isn't working, but it's not working. And the only time it is working is when 14 takes it upon himself to put on his Superman cape and make something happen. That's bullshit. Next quote from David Long Jr. Quote, 8, 24, and 23, so he's talking about all the running backs, are all good backs. Of course, they have weapons outside, but I think the run game stood out to me the most. Robinson's a powerful runner. He can make people miss and break a lot of tackles. Gibson can do a lot of the same things. Like, they don't really run it a lot, but I think that's where they are dangerous. The backs are like that. They had our respect. We've been saying all year long that Brian Robinson in particular, but we've seen that when Gibson is locked in, he can be a problem too, that they should be a bigger part of the offense in terms of the screen game, the run game, and that's going to set up opportunities for you to get the rock to your playmakers. Running the football, getting the running backs involved as runners will open up things for the pass game, and you can also throw it to them as an extension of the run game in the screen game. And we've seen at times, especially earlier in the season, the Denver game is most notable, where we got the running backs involved, when we got the screen game going, when we actually ran the football effectively, and how well the offense performed. We saw that same thing against the Eagles in the first game, where the screen game's working, the short pass game's working, the run game's working, and all of that kind of manifests itself into explosiveness, diversity, everybody touching it. And when we're at our best, that's what happens, but we're not doing that for whatever reason. Then he says, quote, they have some good dudes. Terry, Curtis Samuel is cool too. But I wouldn't say that they have a dominant dude that you come in saying, oh, we got to make sure to stop bro. I say that respectfully too. They have a lot of good dudes, but we really felt like our defense as is was good enough to stop them, and today it was. Continuing, he says, Terry makes some great plays, but it's not like they force it to him or go out of their way to get him the ball. So he can be contained, right? Samuel is nice, but he's a guy that needs to get the ball in open space to really be effective. Against our defense, when everyone is flying around, that's real tough, close quote. So essentially he said, hey, they got some good receivers or whatever. Like, we ain't really tripping, though. None of those dudes we got to be up late at night game planning to stop. And a lot of that speaks to some of you saying, see, Terry's not a real number one. That's why we need to go out and get Marvin Harrison Jr. This is exactly what I'm talking about. They don't respect our receivers. That ain't what he said. What he said is, hey, they got some dudes that could be nice, but they don't get them the ball, so we ain't afraid. What, we supposed to be afraid of Terry's 3 little targets? You heard what he said. They don't go out of their way to get him the ball. They don't force it to him. You can't do that to the Eagles and A.J. Brown. You know why? Because they're going to force it to A.J. Brown 7 or 8 times. And he's going to get his 6, 7, 8, 9 catches. He's going to get 11 targets. You know why? Because CeeDee Lamb, he's going to get 8 or 9 catches. They're going to throw it to him 12 or 13 times. So you got the game plan to stop those dudes because they're going to get their targets. Tyreek Hill is going to get 7 or 8 catches because he's going to get 10 or 11 targets. You're not going into a game saying, hey, we don't really got to worry about Keenan Allen because Justin Herbert ain't going to throw it to him but 2 or 3 times. So we don't really got to trip about him. No, Herbert's going to throw the ball to Keenan Allen 10, 11 times. He's going to have 7 or 8 catches. When you're a top flight receiver, they're supposed to worry about you because there's a high volume of snaps that are coming your way. So we have to be prepared. When you're as insignificant as Terry has been this season in the game plan, week in, week out, there's really no reason to do anything other than let's just play our defense. We should be fine. Like, that's so disheartening to hear, but it's what I've been harping on all season long. For some of you, you're going to hear that statement and say, see, that's why we need a real number one, because Terry ain't it. I hear that and I'm saying, that's on the play caller. He's essentially saying, hey, they don't do enough to get Terry the ball, so we ain't really tripping off of him for real. I mean, he good and he good enough to hurt us, but he ain't going to get enough opportunities, so we ain't tripping. That's what I heard. But that's what I've been saying all year long. So now, also that was on my timeline, Barry Swerluga, who writes for the Washington Post, if I'm not mistaken. I think he still writes for the Washington Post. Tweeted this out yesterday after the game. Tyreek Hill on whether he was surprised to see man coverage on his 78-yard touchdown. Quote from Tyreek Hill, not for real, man, because those guys are great at what they do and they also get paid. But at some point, it's like, man, I don't know, man. I just appreciate it. Thanks for not respecting me, I guess. Close quote. Like, he's trying to be modest. Like, nah, I'm not really tripping. You know, that's what they decided to do. They get paid too. Those are good players over there. Nah. And then at the end, he realized, nah, they was tripping. Like, I ain't seen one-on-one like that since my rookie season. Like, I don't get that very often. And I'm being facetious. He's seen one-on-one this season, and he's cooked it every single time. Okay? Which is why you don't. You go into a game saying he can't have one-on-one coverage. Okay? It's almost like when you got a kid that's allergic to something. No. He can't have milk. He can't have milk. Yeah, she's fine. He's fine. But that one over there, he can't have milk. You can look at their receivers and say, yeah, he's fine. You can one-on-one him. You can one-on-one. He can't have one-on-one coverage. No, he's got to be double-teamed at all times. Right? That's how I went into the game thinking that was going to be the game plan. And to see Quan Martin singled up First third down of the game, 78-yard touchdown. To see Kendall Fuller singled up. And again, when you listen to the players after the game, sounds like guys weren't doing their job. This is what happens when you get to the end of a lost season, when players check out mentally. Dudes just not doing their job, and they don't give a damn. They don't give a shit. It's tough. There's no consequences. What you gonna do, bench me? I mean, it's bad tape for the next group that comes in here. But if I'm on a rookie deal and I'm a second round pick, even though the next regime didn't pick you, if I'm on a rookie contract, likelihood is I'm gonna be back next year. You not though. Anyway, I talked about that on the show, the post-game show last night. Like that's been the most disheartening part about a lot of the things we've seen this year is just, it just doesn't make any sense, because us at home who don't sit and game plan all week long to stop the opposition, we're able to see what needs to be done, and it's like they just didn't. And I find that hard to believe, but it's a lot of things that go on that I find hard to believe that I watch every week play out with this team. So continuing on my timeline, Nikki Javala had a quote from Jonathan Allen in the locker room yesterday after the game, which led into today's conversation surrounding Jonathan Allen, which we'll get to here in a second. So Jonathan Allen, quote, "I'm tired of trying to build character. My character has been built up enough. I'm trying to win," closed quote. So a lot of Jonathan Allen's comments have fallen on deaf ears at this point. A lot of people are frustrated with his play this season, and he's been solid. You know, he's got 5.5 sacks. That's a good number for an interior defensive tackle. He might finish this season with 7.5, maybe 8 sacks, which is a good year. He's never had 10, so let's not act like this is a far cry from where he was a season ago. It's not like Duran, who had 11.5 sacks last year, and I don't know where he is from a sack perspective, but if he makes it to 6, it'd be a miracle this year, it feels like. Right now, it feels like he's only sacked the quarterback twice, maybe 3 times max this season. He's been back there quite a bit, 2 or 3. I could think about at least 3 or 4 opportunities he had a chance for a sack and just didn't get the quarterback down on the ground. But that's no here nor there. That's part of it. That's the thing that used to frustrate us with Montez Sweat. He'd get there, but he wouldn't get the guy on the ground. So a lot of people are like, bro, you should be the last person talking, because you ain't doing shit to change anything that's going on right now. But in the same vein, he can't do it by himself. And he's getting double teamed, as I mentioned. But he's not winning a ton of one-on-ones either, right? Bottom line is, I want to continue on with some of the quotes he gave the Junkies. He does a radio spot with them every week that they paid for. And so he was on the Junkies radio program this morning. Here are some of the quotes. These quotes were essentially transcribed for us via Grant Paulson, who works for 106.7 The Fan. And he writes, John Allen with the Junks at Junks Radio on 106.7 The Fan, when asked if he ever thinks about leaving the Commanders. And this is Allen here, quote, 1,000%. We know that's what he says, 1,000%. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I play this game to win, and I would love to win here for sure, but I want to win first and foremost. So that's always going to be at the front and center of my mind, and everything I'm going to do and be doing in my career is going to make sure I'll have an opportunity to win, closed quote. This next one, and we'll kind of take it all together, and then we'll move on from there. Grant Paulson with another quote from that interview. He says, John Allen with at Junks Radio on 106.7 The Fan on if he would consider having his agent talk to the Commanders about an offseason trade. Allen, quote, if that's what it takes, I'm going to focus on the next 4 games, do what I can to help this team win, and then we'll evaluate things after the season, closed quote. Now, there's another quote in there about Allen saying he doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. That's not what he's looking to do. He's tired of losing. And so here's my stance on this. And I think a lot of people are all over the place with this one. One, if he wants out, if the next GM gets wind of it, he can have his way out. That's one thing that a new GM generally doesn't do, is hold anybody hostage that they didn't bring in here. They're looking to clean house of guys that have been here that they may not think that highly of to begin with. And depending on how this next GM views Jonathan Allen is going to determine whether he's here next year or not. If Allen's position is, this is a rebuild, I see a rebuild coming and I don't want to be a part of it, and that GM says, no, Jonathan, listen to me. This isn't a rebuild. We're not hitting the reset button. I'm coming in here. I'm adding to what you guys already have. I think this team can win and win big immediately. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to get us some free agents. I'm going to draft really well, and we're going to turn this thing around in year one. And I think you're a part of us turning this thing around, and I don't want to see you in another uniform. And I think you're going to be one of the centerpieces and foundational building blocks of what we're doing here. If he goes to Jonathan Allen and says that, Allen will stay here, right? But if he hears that Allen wants out, and in his mind, that GM comes in here and says, hey, it is a rebuild, and if you don't want to be a part of it, I can help you get out of here, he'll be traded this offseason. It's really simple, because he's tired of losing, not having a shot. You don't think him seeing Chase Young be traded to the 49ers didn't eat him alive? Chase Young went from arguably one of the worst teams in the NFC conference to arguably the best team in the NFC, and he's going to have a chance to win a Super Bowl this year. You don't think that shit, resonates with Jonathan Allen? So he's looking at another lost season, and he's frustrated right now, as we all are. And when you're frustrated, you say things that you'll have a chance. I don't know if he regrets anything that he said today, but he'll have a chance to, calm down and say, you know what? I don't want out of Washington, but I want to see what this next guy does. Because this next GM that comes in here, or the GM that comes in here, like the first step was getting rid of Snyder. That's a huge step. And he understood that. The next step now is getting real football people in here to make decisions that are going to impact this organization in a positive manner that's going to lead to victories on the field. Not a bunch of lip service, not a bunch of talking, but actual tangible wins that we can count, that we can see, that can lead us to potentially playing bonus football in January and hopefully into February. If Jonathan Allen can't see that vision when these moves are made this offseason, he's going to request a trade, and I think he's going to be traded. Because again, when a new GM comes in, the last thing he wants is to hold somebody hostage that he didn't bring here. Ronald Rivera got here and he could have salvaged the relationship between Trent Williams and this organization. He could have made sure that Quentin Dunbar felt comfortable here. All Quentin Dunbar wanted was more money. He was on a rookie contract. He just wanted to be paid, right? He could have done those things. He could have given Brandon Sheriff a brand new deal as soon as he got here, and Sheriff probably would have signed it. You know what he said? Nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not tied to any of these guys. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to assess everything, see what's what, and then we'll start to make decisions. Well, that didn't fly with dudes that's been here, that's been busting their ass, that's been in a position to get paid and are ready to get paid. That's not going to fly for a guy like Trent Williams, who was so frustrated with the last organization and the last regime that he wanted nothing to do with the organization. But here's a breath of fresh air. Here's an opportunity, and we blew it. That same opportunity is going to be extended to this next general manager, and really it's up to him to decide where Jonathan Allen, ranks in terms of importance moving forward. If he deems Jonathan Allen to be a player that we can ill afford to trade, we really feel like this guy's a difference maker and we're going to continue to build around him on this, and Daron Payne on this defensive line, then he's not going to trade him. He's going to tell him, look, we're going to win, and you're a part of why we're going to win. If he doesn't view Allen in that light, and he does think this is a rebuild, and it's going to take some time, he'll trade Jonathan Allen, and that'll give him more resources to operate with in the offseason. So it's an interesting situation. I think he's frustrated. I don't think he's going to force his way out of Washington unless he's given confirmation that this is in fact a rebuild. Because again, what that GM says after they hire him is going to go a long way in determining how Jonathan Allen feels. And the moves that they do or don't make in the offseason, it'll tell the story. If they're super aggressive in free agency, then we know, okay, they're trying to win right away. If they're kind of quiet and they're kind of just sitting back and they're looking for bargain basement deals, they're looking for, those second wave free agent signings, and they're going all the way to the back of the store looking for those clearance pink tag items, then, okay, you're not serious about winning next year. So we'll find out if they're trying to come in and win. And Allen will see that. And if he feels like, okay, they're making moves to try to, change the dynamic that's going on right now, he'll want to be here. If not, if he thinks it's the same old, and here's the thing, he's done with Ronald and company, clearly. Well, they're done here. So his frustration really stems from this current regime and what he's dealt with his entire career. It's been losing. It's been bad coaching. It's been bad decision after bad decision. It's been bad ownership. Well, all of that we're hoping is changing. The owner is gone. This coaching staff is about to be gone. The decision makers are all about to be gone. And new guys are going to be brought in. New people, rather, are going to be brought in to those positions that we think are going to be way more competent than the people that held those positions prior to them. The question is, how much patience does a guy like Jonathan Allen have left in him? And for some of you, like, I don't give a shit. Trade him. Get something for him. He ain't doing shit anyway. And that may ultimately be the case. They may ultimately move him. I'm just going to tell you, cooler heads usually prevail in the offseason. When you're in it, I told you, this is the hardest part. When you're going through this is the hardest part. Because Jonathan Allen knows change is coming. He knows that. He's not stupid. He's not oblivious to the fact that change is coming. But what he is a human being. And no one wants to keep getting their brains bashed in and being told, hey, growth and development. Hey, we're going to be better, but we got to take these lumps. We've been taking lumps for 4 years, Ron. How much more longer you want us to take them? For a guy like Jonathan Allen, he was taking lumps with Jay Gruden too. So he's seen it. He's done it. He's lived through it. He knows what this is like. He knows this organization ain't been shit since he got here. He's been a fan of this team. He grew up in the area. He knows all about it. He wants to be a part of them turning it around, but he also doesn't want to waste his career losing every single week, making excuses about why you didn't get it done again. So this offseason is going to go a long way in determining how he feels. And really, I've said this is a huge offseason because he's not alone. You don't think Terry's frustrated? I know you guys. So somebody brought it up after the game, Terry's quote. And I was like, Terry ain't say that shit. I said, I hope he did, but he didn't say it. No, Terry actually said, yeah, I got a lot of cardiovascular work in. I got a lot of cardio in today. And remember, I said the same thing about Jahan like 3-4 weeks ago when he played 81 of 83 snaps and he had 2 targets. I said, well, damn, Jahan got a lot of cardio today. If you've ever played receiver at any level, it doesn't matter what level, you could be playing pee-wee football. If you constantly running around, because receivers run a lot. Yeah, they get to take plays off when they're blocking, but they run a lot. And you know, in this offense, with the amount of pass plays that we didn't run a ton of them this past week. But you know, in this offense where you're throwing a football anywhere from 37 to 52 times a week, if you're only getting 2 targets and you were on the field for 49 of those 52 pass plays, what are we talking about? Terry's frustrated, and I told y'all that. You can see his body language. Terry looked checked out. I think that the last game that everybody was mentally engaged in, the last stand, and I felt it, was the Seattle game. That felt like one we had to have. You won against New England. It gave you a little bit of momentum. You had a chance to get back to 500. This was it. That was the one. And losing that game took the wind out of our sails. And you saw the end result coming home against the Giants and what happened. And I mean, that game, it looked like everybody had checked out already against the Giants, honestly. And so everything that has happened since is not a coincidence to me. It's not by happenstance. This team's mentally checked out. They're done with this staff. They're done with this regime. They're ready for change. And there's nothing they can say to spark them moving forward. We can have all the conversations about guys got to play for pride and, why are you, what's your why and all that shit. At the end of the day, all of that's out the window. These guys are done. And so we'll see. This offseason is going to be interesting because Jonathan Allen may not be the only guy that's not here next year that we thought would be here. But that's what happens. And I told y'all this 2 months ago. Because a lot of y'all have been talking about wanting Ronald fired. And this was before we got to a point where we knew this was going to happen. I said, be careful what you ask for. A lot of y'all get attached to some of these players. And I'm telling you right now, when there's a full remodel, right? When they tear down all the wallpaper, right? And they repaint all the rooms and they redecorate and they take some of these cabinets out and they create some space and they knock out that wall and create a different room. When all of this change happens, a lot of the shit that you loved, a lot of the players that you rock with, they're not going to be here. Because that next regime doesn't give a damn about your attachment to Terry McLaurin, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, none of these dudes. Tress Way, ain't nobody safe. So, hey, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I'm on board. Whatever happens, sign me up. But it's the waiting now. It's this last part. This is the hardest. This part is the hardest. So, I was going to go through the snaps. Do I really need to, though? I mean, they're here, right? I mean, shit, I'm here. Let's just do it real quick. Andrew Wiley, Sam Cosmi, Charles Leno, Andrew Wiley and Sam Cosmi were the only two linemen to play all 55 snaps. At the end of the game, they took out Charles Leno Jr., Chris Paul, Sam Howell, and Tyler Larson at the end of the game for those three handoffs that Jacoby Brissett had to end the game. So the only guys that stayed on the field were Wiley and Cosmi for all 55 snaps. So McLaurin played 45 of the 55 snaps. So did Jahan Dotson for 82%. And in 45 plays, Terry had 3 targets. And one of them was not even a target. They're going to call it a target, but that was Sam, being corralled by 3 different Dolphins trying to throw it away, and the shit didn't make it out of bounds. Similar to the Giants game where he threw the pick 6 at the end because he's trying to throw it away as he's getting mauled by multiple defenders, and he's trying to get it out of bounds, and he doesn't get enough on it, and Terry has to play defensive back and make sure it's not picked off. So that's not even a real target. Really, Terry was targeted twice in the game. I don't think it was much better for Jahan, but at least he had a catch, right? But there's been games this season where Jahan didn't register, right? So it's sad. It's what it is. It's sad. Logan Thomas, 34 snaps, 62%. Curtis Samuel, 32 snaps, 58%. Gibson, 31 snaps, 56%. John Bates, 25 snaps, 45%. Byron Pringle, 16 snaps, 29%. Chris Rodriguez Jr. and Brian Robinson both played 12 snaps. Robinson obviously had the hamstring injury. His season could be done. 22% of the snaps. De'Ami Brown, 11 snaps, 20%. Cole Turner, 7 snaps, 13%. Jamison Crowder played 5 snaps, 9%. And then Cornelius Lucas, Trent Scott, Nick Gates, and Jacoby Brissett all came in at the very end to take the final 3 snaps of the game to get us to the locker room. So you go from there to the defense, 61 snaps defensively. Cam Curl, Kendall Fuller, Cody Barton, Benjamin St. Juste all played all 61 of the snaps, so 100%. Percy Butler played 59% or 59 snaps for 97%. Jamie Davis played 55 snaps, 90%. Deron Payne played 49 snaps, 80%. Jonathan Allen and Casey Toohill both played 40 snaps for 66%. Andre Jones Jr. played 33 snaps, 54%. KJ Henry played 30. Same with Quan Martin, which equals out to 49%. Khaleke Hudson played 28 snaps, 46%. Vidarian Mathis, 21 snaps, 34%. John Ridgeway and Jalen Harris both played 17 snaps for 28%. Danny Johnson played 6 snaps, 10%. And Terrell Burgess played 2 snaps for 3%. So those are your defensive snap numbers. Is somebody getting 20? Not enough. At this point, do we even care about snap breakdowns at this point? Tomorrow, we'll talk about something that you all care about. We all care about. I'm not going to say you, because I care too. And that's where we are in the draft. We'll look at that. We'll assess it. We'll take a trip around the NFC East, all that good jazz on tomorrow's show. We'll have some other conversations because I think there are other conversations to be had. And I'll be on the show tomorrow night with Protect Sports, my guy Tones. So head over to his channel. I'll be on at 9. I don't know when they're starting the stream. They might start it at 8, and I just jump in at 9. But whatever the case may be, check that stream out. A bunch of content creators will be on it, and we'll be chopping it up, talking about this team on the bye week. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. We'll be live on Wednesday night. Y'all know what it is. But until then, you guys take care. God bless. Post up. Take command. Y'all have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.